In 2002, a Nokia executive named Anssi Vanjoki was speeding on his red Harley-Davidson motorbike in Helsinki, Finland. Policemen pulled him over for going 47 miles per hour in a 31 miles per hour zone. He was fined with a rather expensive ticket, $103,000 to be exact. And more recently, in 2015, a Finnish businessman was caught speeding and had to pay a $60,000 ticket. Of course, not all tickets in Finland are that pricey. The average speeding ticket is around $500.
So why the huge disparity? It's because Finland's fine policy takes more than just crime into account, a policy that other nations have adopted and the United States is considering too.
In the United States, certain minor offenses are charged with a fine at a fixed rate. For example, in Florida, every time someone's caught littering, they are ticketed $100. Some states set minimum and maximum amounts to determine the rates, which allows for more leeway. But Finland's fine policy is based on equity. They're called day fines. Basically, the more you earn, the more you have to pay for minor crimes such as speeding. Finland was the first country to introduce this type of equity fine in 1921. Sweden followed suit, and then Denmark.
The purpose of the day fine system is to equalize the burden of a punishment regardless of income. Not only does the punishment fit the crime, it fits the criminal.
This deters wealthy offenders from taking advantage of the law because they have enough money to buy their way out of a crime. Plus, fines based on income make them more manageable for those with lower incomes. Day fine policies are based on a two-step system. First, the court decides the severity of the crime using a certain number of days. A worse crime results in a higher amount of days for the offender. Next, the court decides on the daily fine based on the offender's salary. This is where the amount each person pays changes. It's calculated by the number of days the crime is worth, multiplied by the nominal daily fee. The daily fine should be 1/60th of one's monthly income, which is approximately 50% of the offender's daily net income with a reduction of basic needs. For example, offender A and offender B commit the same crime. Let's say they both were caught going 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Therefore, they are both charged with 47 days. However, their income differs. Offender A earns $100 a day, while offender B earns $10 a day. So offender A's fine is their income of $100 times 0.5 times 47 days, which comes out to $2,350. Offender B's will be $10 times 0.5 times 47 for a total of $235. So while the total numerical fee differs, the punishment is an equal financial burden to both offenders. According to the Finnish Criminal Code, the most someone can be charged for their first offense is 120 days, but there's not an upper limit on the day fine amount. Finland is the only country without a daily money limit. That's why high earners are hit with these headline-worthy fines. And according to tax records, the Nokia executive earned about $12.5 million in the previous year, and the businessman made $6.5 million.
The offender is sentenced to prison or community service only if the fine goes unpaid. This allows the country to generate more revenue from fines while not spending as much money on prisoners. One major goal of day fines is to reduce incarceration rates.
Finland's incarceration rates have been on a downward trend since the 1950s. As of 2018, there are only 53 per 100,000 people behind bars. In contrast, the United States has 698 per 100,000 people in prison as of 2020, the highest rate in the world.
Of course, it isn't apples to apples. There are many other factors that account for this discrepancy in incarceration rates, like the different set of laws, for instance.
However, other countries that use day fines yield similarly successful results. Germany adopted its own system in 1975. Day fines are the default punishment for most violations, including theft, fraud, and battery. More than 80% of penalties are fined. Following the implementation of the system, the country conducted studies to measure the effectiveness. These proved that fines were more effective than prison in the instance of reconviction rates for offenses like fraud and theft, but not for career criminals. Offenders were more likely to pay their fines too, which generated more revenue. Only about 4% of offenders failed to pay.
So if day fines have shown signs of success in other countries, why doesn't the US use them? Well, it's not as if the country hasn't tried.
In 1987, the National Institute of Justice launched a day fine pilot program in Staten Island, New York. After 2 years, it resulted in increased revenue, reduced arrest warrants, and reduced costly court appearances. Other locations also set up short-term day fine systems. From 1991 to 1993, the Maricopa County program in Arizona found that day fines reduced the chance of criminals getting rearrested. But unlike Staten Island and Arizona, the program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin had reduced revenue, and the pilot program ceased.
But it just might not have been the right time. President Ronald Reagan had a notably tough stance on crime that trickled through the American justice system.
The rise in crime was not an unavoidable accident. As all of you know, crime today is an American epidemic. Lenient laws and lenient judges have been greatly to blame.
He believed the death penalty saves lives, grew law enforcement by 6%, and launched the infamous War on Drugs campaign.
These proposals will bring the federal commitment to fighting drugs to $3 billion.
These policies were founded on the belief that harsh penalties reduce crime.
But would day fines in the US work today? It's hard to say, mostly because the comparison to Finland isn't exactly fair.
Not only is the United States' population almost 60 times the size, but the economies, ideologies, culture, styles of government of these two nations are drastically different. For one, the wage gap in the US is much wider. Critics of the system believe day fines could create further disparities in certain US neighborhoods, especially in regards to reckless driving. An income-based system might appear to help the poor, but that's forgetting the victims of those crimes. Casey Mulligan, a professor of law at the University of Chicago, suggests that low fines might make crimes more prevalent. Do we want more speeding past schools in poor neighborhoods than in rich neighborhoods?
Day fines could also reduce revenue for already poor cities and towns, while wealthy towns might see revenue growth due to increased average fines.
But it's not just wealth distribution.
They have a very elaborate social safety net. The government provides a vast array of services. They have socialized medicine, they have free education. They basically assume the government is there to serve us. The government is there to make life better. And it has to justify what it does or doesn't do on the grounds of whether it makes life better. So when that government that provides you with these services says that it thinks it's fair to put a fine on a speeder that's, X $1,000, it's not that you necessarily agree with that the government is doing it, but you don't have the American notion that the government is a bunch of thieves, that they've all got their hands in my pockets, that they all are taking my money.
The United States also just has more crime.
Compared to most countries, Finland is a minimal crime place. It is a minimal incarceration place. That's true of Europe in general, but particularly of Finland and the other Scandinavian countries. So it seems to me, I wouldn't want to argue causality, but clearly, if you run your society in a different way, you don't get the anger, the bitterness, the economic inequalities that provoke crime.
Recently, Finland adjusted their own fine system. Now, minor crimes such as low-speed speeding and parking will be subject to flat rates, while more dangerous crimes like reckless driving will still be subject to day fines. This change aims to maximize administrative efficiency. Overall, it seems unlikely that the US would ever implement its own day fine system. It's just too different. But if you're a Finnish millionaire with a motorcycle, you might want to think twice about going over that speed limit.